and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about the color green and how to mix it. If you're new around here, my name is Keiko. I'm a mixed media artist and watercolor paint maker based in Hawaii. So, green, green, green. Naturally, you could just go out and buy a huge variety of different greens. And I mean, as a paint maker, I'm actually glad if you do that. So, why would you want to mix your own watercolor greens? Reason number one, maybe you're looking for a very specific green. Let's say you want to paint something from a reference photo, a landscape, or a plant that uses a gorgeous green that you don't have in your palette. Or maybe somebody has a commission for you that they want you to paint, and that commission or that photo, reference photo, uses a specific green that you don't have in your palette. Reason number two, maybe you love painting outdoors, you love painting plein air, or maybe you want to take a few paints with you while you travel. You don't want to take hundreds of paints, so you better just take a small amount of paints, and then if you know how to mix your colors, how to mix your greens, it's gonna make your life so much easier. Reason number three kind of ties in with what I've just said, is when you want to work with a limited color palette, and maybe you watched my video about limited color palettes the other day, and you just want to see how many colors you can create from just, say, a few primary colors. Another reason could be that you would like to come up with your own signature color palette and would like to create your own unique greens that make your artwork stand out. Yet another reason could be that you would like to try out a new watercolor brand that you've never tried before and your friends are raving about it, but you don't want to buy the whole color range. Maybe you just want to try out a few colors, and then, you know, if you have the capability to mix them, you'll end up with having more colors at your disposal, even if you just buy a few colors. And last but not least, mixing your own colors, not just greens, but colors in general, will give you a deeper understanding of the paints that you have and what to expect from them. Now that we've looked at why you would want to start mixing your own greens, let's look at how you can mix them. Number one, you could take a green that you already have, for example, phthalo green, and then add yellow or blue or even red, black, or brown. And number two is to mix yellows and blues. Now, let's say you've created a few really beautiful greens that you love a lot, and later on you come back and then you can't quite remember the recipe. Which yellow did I use? Which blue did I add black? And for this reason, I recommend that you create color charts. A color chart is basically a piece of paper with a bunch of swatches that you create by combining different colors. So you can do something a bit more elaborate, like this chart here, this type of chart. I actually did a live stream tutorial on how to create this type of charts, and I'll put a card up here so you can check it out if you like. But today I would like to talk about a different type of chart that I personally love the most. And these are these type of linear charts where you put one color on one side, the other one on the other side, and then in between you create mixes of both colors, where you have the yellow side here. The greens that are closer to the yellow contain more yellow, and the greens that are closer to the blue contain more blue. Of course, you can also use larger sheets of paper, or you can paint your swatches alongside the long side of the paper so you have more variations of your greens. Let's talk about supplies first. The paper I'm using today is a paper that I use very often. It's by the Italian company Fabriano, and it's 50% cotton. Now, it really doesn't matter what paper you use. You don't have to use the same paper. What's most important is that you reach for the paper that you like. So I do recommend that you make your swatches on the paper that you use the most. And I know this can be you might hesitate because maybe you're using a pretty expensive paper, but because swatches will come out differently on different types of paper, I do recommend that you use the paper that you like using the most. As for paints, I really thought about which colors to use today naturally, because you might not have the same colors that I have, and therefore I decided to use colors that I think are pretty common in basic palettes. I have 2 cool colors and I have 2 warm colors, and then we're gonna do another swatch row with these 2 colors. I talk about these 2 a little later. First, this is a lemon yellow, this is a Prussian blue, and over here we have a yellow ochre and an ultramarine blue. Now here on the left hand side you have cool colors. Both the lemon yellow and the Prussian blue are cool colors. Here in this row you have a warm yellow ochre and a warm ultramarine blue. I know these distinctions between warm and cool colors can be a bit confusing, and honestly, if you're just experimenting with color swatches, I don't think you really have to worry about this distinction right now. I think if you get more into it and you're more interested in finding out about this, then you can really get into the distinction between warm and cool colors. If I can say so in a nutshell, the cool colors have a bias towards green and blue, so they lean towards green and blue, and the warm colors lean towards yellow, red, and orange. Usually what you can do is you can go to your paints manufacturer's website and you will find the information. So for example, the Schminke Lemon Yellow has a greenish bias, so it's a cool color. And for example, Ultramarine Blue is a warm color. Your manufacturer will not always tell you exactly what color it is, so there's always also the option to just search on the internet. You can type in something like ultramarine blue, cool or warm color. I'm not guaranteeing that the answer you'll get is 100% correct, but at least it'll give you a hint. The only reason why I'm mentioning this is that warm and cool colors mixed together will create different types of green. So for example, here, I mixed the cool lemon color, yellow lemon, with a cool blue, and you have these super vibrant greens. Whereas when you mix a warm yellow with a warm blue, as here in the first row, it's a totally different story. So when you get more into all this color theory, I think it will be helpful to know the distinction between warm and cool colors. But first step, I will show you today the difference it makes. And then we have these 2 odd colors here. I'm saying odd because not yellow and blue, right? So if you remember in the beginning of this video, I said that you can also use a green that you already have. This is a phthalo green, and mix it with whatever color to see what comes out of it. So I chose a medium crimson red, and let's see what colors we can create with this combo. I will use a ceramic mixing palette. My water container has 2 partitions, so I usually love to rinse my brush first in one and then rinse it one more time so it's really clean. I'm using a size 8 round brush today. It doesn't really matter what brush you use, I'd say. You can also use a flat brush or a cat tongue brush if you want more, defined squares for your swatches, but I like to do them a bit wild, so I'm not too concerned about the geometry of things. Let's start with the lemon yellow. I'm grabbing the paint from the pen and then just painting it into my ceramic palette. If you have tube watercolors, they might actually work even better than watercolors from a pan. I personally really love working with pan watercolors, but squeezing the paint out of the tube is probably more convenient than using pan watercolors, just as a side note. I'm moving on to my Prussian blue. Now this is a very strong color, so I won't need much to create my mixes. Beautiful, deep blue, one of my favorites. Adding a little bit more water. Then I'm going to place the swatch here on the right hand side. So these are the two colors, lemon, yellow, and Prussian blue. And in between we're going to create the mixes. Now I still have a little bit of Prussian blue on my brush, so I'm just going to mix it in with my lemon yellow. Mix it real well, and then paint swatch number 2. Beautiful bright green. No need rinsing the brush, you can just pick up some more Prussian blue and add it to the mix here on the left hand side and paint your next swatch. So I usually try and dab my brush one time, or maybe twice. Depends a little bit. If I think it's not enough of a difference between this color I just mixed and the swatch, I might add a little bit more blue. Because the goal is to get more blue the more we move towards the right hand side. And I still think it's not enough, so I'm going to rinse my brush and pick up a little more of the Prussian blue. Now this is a beautiful deep green. Oh wow, that's so lovely. Let's add even more Prussian blue for the next swatch. And even a bit more. Oh, gorgeous. Dark, dark teal. This would be great for an ocean scene, for the shadows, or even a tropical lush forest for the shadow parts, for the darker parts. Absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna grab a pencil. Pencil, there it is. And careful because the swatches are still wet. Lemon yellow. And over here I have my Prussian blue. If you're planning on doing these swatch cards or color charts for different brands, you could also write or note the brand that you used. In my case, these are Aloha watercolors, so that you don't get confused later on when you come back to your charts. Alright, so with this principle, pretty much I'm gonna fill in the next rows. So I might at some point speed up the video if there's a lot of mixing going on, because now you know how it works. You can recreate every row with the colors that you're using today. So for the next row, I'm going to use the same lemon yellow again, but then I will mix it with the other blue, with my ultramarine blue. Grab a little more. All right, the swatch down here, and rinse my brush. Might be a good idea to change your paint water in between. Maybe not right after the first row, but if you do larger color charts, for example. probably a good idea to change your paint water, or maybe even have several paint water containers ready to go. This is my ultramarine blue, painting a swatch over on this side. And mixing it with my lemon yellow for the next swatch. Now, ultramarine blue is a granulating color, and I'm curious to see if that will show up in the mixes. The fact that it's granulating. A little here. I'm rinsing my brush again because I want to pick up a little more ultramarine blue. To add to my mix. And then let's add the rest of this blue pot here into our mix for the last swatch, for the last green swatch. If you feel there's not enough difference between the swatches, which I definitely think there isn't, then you can add a bit more blue. And I wouldn't add it right onto the paper, but just make another mix in your palette, and then pick up that mix and paint over the swatch. If you add the blue directly on the swatch, you might end up with drying edges and the swatch might not be looking cohesive. Is that the right word? What I mean is you might end up seeing different colors different colors pop up in your swatch. Here we go. And I definitely see the granulation here. I think it's probably easier to show you once it's dry, but I definitely see the granulation. Now let's move on to our warm yellow, the yellow ochre. Now this is indeed a very warm yellow. It's almost orangey red. So if you want to do something less extreme, you could, for example, also choose a medium cadmium light, or a cadmium deep, or a Hansa yellow deep, or Indian yellow hue, for example. But I just thought for demonstrating purposes today, it really makes a big difference what kind of yellows and blues you use and mix together. So my yellow ochre, and I'll mix it with Prussian blue. Wonderful. Really love these more muted tones here. I went ahead and changed my paint water for the bottom row, and I also added the names of the pigments. Going back to my yellow ochre, is our first finished color chart page featuring cool yellow in the first 2 rows, a warm yellow in the second 2 rows, and then over here we tried out a Prussian blue and an ultramarine blue. So we have a really good overview of what the cool colors and the warm colors in combination will do when combined. Now, before I go ahead and rinse my ceramic mixing palette, I wanted to show you this little postcard I made with using the mixes from the ceramic palette. So rather than just rinsing it all off, I just used those mixes and, you know, painted some little swatches on this postcard. Or you could maybe paint something like this and make tags from it for gifts. Let's make another color chart. I went ahead and changed my paint water and also cleaned my ceramic palette. For this chart I will be using the phthalo green, that's a cool green, as my basis color, and then I'll mix it with a medium crimson red. I'll mix it with my yellow ochre and with my lemon yellow, and then with my Prussian blue. Because I already showed you the principle of how these color swatches work and how you can make them, I will speed up this next part of the video and I'll put on some music. Here is our second color chart based on phthalo green mixed with different other colors. I find it super interesting. Look at this first row mixed with a medium crimson red, which is also a cool color. But can you see the granulation? So it's almost as if these two colors separated in the mixes. Super beautiful. Really love this. This would actually be a good idea for making this a convenience paint. Then in the next row we have phthalo green and a warm yellow ochre, and you can see right away very muted, more olive moss type of greens. And then in the next row we have the cool phthalo green and the cool lemon yellow, which make for very bright, very vibrant colors, almost neon colors. And then here in the last row we have the beautiful teal colors. So these would be great for painting oceans. And just one more thing I forgot to mention earlier, or show you earlier, because I just, was so fascinated by this separation and granulation here in the first row. we had the same thing happening in the first color chart with the ultramarine blue. Remember when I told you it's a granulating color? So you can clearly see the difference between this swatch from ultramarine blue and lemon yellow, and then the Prussian blue and the lemon yellow. So you can really see the granules of the ultramarine blue pigment here. The reason why I mention granulating paints here is that in general, granulating paints mix to a more opaque paint. So if you want to go for a really bright and not opaque, but really bright and transparent type of green, I would recommend that you mix a cool yellow with a cool blue and that the blue is not granulating. So for example, you could use a phthalo blue and you will have really, really bright, transparent types of green. But if this kind of opaqueness and granulating fascinates you, then by all means go ahead and experiment with some granulating colors as well. I hope you enjoyed today's video and feel inspired to mix all of your colors. As always, I'd love for you to leave a comment down below, especially if you have ideas or wishes about future videos here on my channel. I'll see you again in my next video. Until then, happy creating and aloha! For you to leave a comment down below, especially if you have ideas. That's the puppies. Did you hear? I better go check on the little puppies. They're just not even 3 weeks old.